Okay, so and I'm going to mention for a bit to McCloskey's terminology. If you read a lot of Austrian Economics, like I have, I started to get a little confused because I was like, what does she mean by economics and property rights and capital accumulation? I mean, it seems like those all are great to me. I works for me. So I think by economics she means materialist economics. I think it means economics which ignores the subjective and human factor, and the fact that there are people who are out there acting, even though we're in an obviously material world. What we have here is because people who make decisions. And then by property rights, I think she really means basic land holding. And maybe even just the ability to keep anything you might have in your possession. But I think the larger concept of property rights in Rothbard and Mises does refer to the right to innovate and to trade as well. And for her, capital accumulation means more things. So it's fair enough, that's how probably a lot of economists see it. But I think that Mises and Rothbard, and I checked actually, saw innovation as part of capital accumulation. And they saw that entrepreneurs' profits stem from innovating, not just from routinely piling up capital. So innovation is a form of capital accumulation and savings. Time is invested in study and experimentation and innovation. And also, in Austrian school, all profit is subjective. It's invisible, it's not material. I mean, you can make a monetary profit, but the reason why we buy anything is actually because we get a subjective profit from that. The beer is worth more than the few dollars you pay for it, or whatever it is you're buying. So, therefore, in the Austrian school, property rights and capital accumulation do explain growth, but not in materialist economics if you go off McCloskey's work. I'm sure there's some economists who will disagree, but I think she gives a lot of evidence that a lot of the standard explanations are misfocused. Okay, so I have, for a conclusion, I just have some kind of criticisms and reactions to this. I kind of think that, I just find it a little surprising. Aren't people naturally innovative? And I think there is a big history of innovation prior to 1800. However, do you think she's right that obviously people have gotten a lot richer since 1800, and maybe there has been way more innovation? It's also tricky because I think that the history of things prior to 1500 there's very little history, so that makes it also confusing. I would say that McCloskey, like the Austrian school, does see older societies as restricting liberty of the bourgeois to innovate, but she doesn't really talk about it that much. She talks a lot about the dignity, but she doesn't talk that much about what was it which was preventing people from going out and being innovative. She gives an example of a Chinese village outlawing a more efficient sickle, but I do get the sense from European history that it documents rampant restrictions on free exchange, including price controls on goods and labor and banning of products, kind of referring to the Hans Hermann Hoppe comparing Scandinavia and Italy and France. And I think this contrasts with the strong emphasis on property rights in many cultures in history, as far as land ownership and also not taking people's stuff. So it's still a question to me, why did Italy and the Low Countries get so rich earlier? As probably aware, Northern Italy was incredibly advanced in the Renaissance. So what happened then? Why did they take off in 1600? So hopefully the next book will answer this question. So to me, it seems like what was missing prior to 1800 was transference of property by consent. And this is one of the three things that Hume said was necessary for civil society. So Hume said there are three things which are necessary. Transference of property by consent, what we would also call free exchange. Private property, which is you get to, whatever you have, you get to keep. And the keeping of promises embedded in contracts. So I think that if I could advise her to rewrite the books a bit, I would have put more emphasis on that. And so I think what was really important was you needed what I do like about the book, though, is the way it emphasizes the importance of innovation and to focus on that, and also to focus more on the idea of free exchange and free internal trade, not just external trade. There's an interesting example of Spitalsfield, which was an area where they had all these silk merchants, and you had to pay people an exact price per piece, and so in good times, you couldn't pay people anymore, so there would be unmet demand, or merchants couldn't bid up the wages of the workers. And then in bad times, the merchants simply wouldn't pay anybody for anything because they couldn't make a profit. So that was a great example of a sort of bad economic policy, but there were lots of these in England. There are also guilds all over Europe. And so one of the things people have talked about in explaining economic history is that people would set up shop in interstices, which is the areas in between the controlled areas. So you'd have a feudal lord over here, you'd have maybe a town here, another feudal lord, etc. And then there might be some areas where nobody was really controlling anything. So a merchant would come out and set up a factory there. And nobody would tell him what to do. So he could produce all the silk he wanted, and he didn't have to listen to the rules down at Spitalsfield. And they would also smuggle a lot. That was other way they got around the trade restrictions. So this is, and then eventually the laws changed quite a bit to really allow internal free trade. France, I think, was notorious for having all sorts of internal tariffs, etc. And yeah, so those are kind of my criticisms. And then in conclusion, I just want to read a paragraph. So I think McCloskey's main point in this series is to defend the bourgeois and by extension our existence. In this volume, it is to show that materialist economics is insufficient to explain and defend the bourgeois order from its enemies. Materialists have eyes and see not. Materialist economics is a dead idol and needs to be smashed. Innovators work in the material world, but they build the future in their image. Entrepreneurship and innovation start with an active imagination, not mechanical decision-making. While de-anthropomorphizing the natural world makes sense, economics is about humans and cannot be inhumane or depersonalized. Only people imagine and then decide to act. What is needed is humanomics, economics in the tradition of the Austrian school, Adam Smith, and the scholastics, with moral, acting, valuing, and speaking humans. Thank you guys very much.